Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into the dusty, sun-scorched world of the Wild West, where the air tastes like iron, the ground crunches beneath your boots, and the nearest Starbucks is about a century away. You're not a cowboy, you're not even remotely ready. But here you are, trying to survive a single day in a land that chewed up most people and spat them out like stale tobacco. The breeze is dry and hot, carrying that smell of horses, sweat, and something vaguely like old beef. You've just stepped off a rattling stagecoach that felt like riding inside a wooden box being kicked down a hill. Your legs are numb, your back hurts, and you're already sunburned from sitting on top for 12 hours under that brutal midday sun. A tumbleweed rolls by, because of course it does. You squint at the town. It's a handful of wooden buildings warped by heat and time, sagging like they're exhausted. There's a saloon with swinging doors that look like they've seen some things, a general store that sells exactly what you don't need, and a jail with bars that wouldn't stop a determined goat. A few folks glance your way. They size you up instantly. Your modern clothes don't help, and your soft hands are practically screaming, "I own more than one pair of shoes." Nobody smiles. One man spits tobacco juice dangerously close to your boot and mutters something about tenderfoots. Welcome to town. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your city and local time in the comments so I know when you're trying to fall asleep. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You try to walk down the wooden sidewalk, but one of the planks is loose and launches up with a thunk that nearly takes out your shin. Another step, and your boot gets stuck between two boards. This is less romantic frontier and more instant tetanus. You catch sight of yourself in a dusty window. You look like you've just lost a bar fight, and technically, you haven't even gotten to the bar yet. Your skin's already coated in a fine layer of trail dust. Your lips are dry. Your hat, you bought one, of course, doesn't sit quite right, and if you're honest, you'd pay $20 for a single moist towelette. You wander into the general store. It smells like dried beans, leather, and something pickled that probably isn't food. Behind the counter is a man who looks like he was born here, aged 40 years in a week, and plans to die here next Tuesday. He doesn't say hello. He just stares. You ask if there's somewhere to get water. He says, "There's a creek out back. Don't drink too much, or you'll shock your system." Cool, encouraging. You buy a tin cup with the only money you have, a weird jangle of coins called silver dollars, 2 bits, and something called a nickel. Historians still argue whether frontier currency was more confusing than it was useful. Prices changed depending on the day, the mood, and whether the storekeeper liked your face. Cup in hand, you head to the creek. It's muddy. There's something floating that looks like it could once have been an animal. You hesitate. You're already dehydrated. You decide to risk it. You kneel, fill your cup, and sip. It's warm, slightly metallic, vaguely alive. You immediately regret it. Back in town, your stomach gurgles with ominous rebellion. But there's no time to reflect on that. A bell rings in the distance. It's the lunch call from the boarding house you'll be staying at. $1 per night if you don't mind sharing a room with 3 strangers, one of whom snores like a walrus being strangled. You rush over, hoping for something edible. Lunch is beans. Just beans. one ladleful per person. No seasoning, no plate, just a wooden bowl with a spoon that's been carved from a stick. You chew slowly. One of the beans crunches. You decide not to ask questions. At the table, an older woman talks about how her husband was bitten by a rattlesnake, but walked it off. Another man brags about fending off a cougar with a fire poker. You share your story of getting your foot stuck in the boardwalk and receive zero sympathy. A fly lands on your lip. You're too tired to react. After lunch, you try to find somewhere quiet to rest. There is no such place. A kid is running by with a lasso. Someone's hammering something to the side of a building with no clear goal. A goat bleats aggressively at you from the saloon porch. You step into the shade of the jail, just for relief. Inside, the sheriff is asleep at his desk. His gun is on the table. A prisoner is singing off-key from the cell behind him. You decide not to ask about crime statistics in this town. Outside, the wind kicks up a small dust devil that pelts you with gravel. You shield your face with your arm. Your hat flies off. You chase it for half a block, catch it just before it tumbles into a horse trough. A bystander claps slowly, sarcastically. You consider crying. You do not. As the sun inches overhead, the heat becomes suffocating. You long for air conditioning, ice water, or even just a ceiling fan. But here, shade is the only currency that matters. You find a spot under a broken awning, lean against the wall, and finally let yourself rest. Until someone's mule sneezes directly on you. The Wild West was never about comfort. It was survival, plain and simple, and even that wasn't guaranteed. One real historical fact: in many frontier towns, life expectancy was often under 40. Between disease, accidents, violence, and sheer bad luck, people didn't live long enough to complain. As for the quirky bits, some folks believed hanging a horseshoe over your bed would ward off evil spirits. Others just believed in carrying more guns than pants. And you? You've only been here a few hours. You're sunburned, sweaty, thirsty, and possibly poisoned by a bean. Welcome to the West. You're thirsty again. You don't realize how much you depend on things like filtered water until you're crouching by a lukewarm creek, weighing whether this time you'll sip upstream of where the horses are bathing. Spoiler alert, there is no safe part of the stream. It's all just degrees of regret. Your tongue feels like it's been sandpapered. Your lips are starting to crack. You eye the murky water, cup in hand, and brace yourself. Just a little sip, just enough to wet your mouth. It tastes like mud, metal, and mosquito larvae. Refreshing. You stumble back toward town, your stomach already beginning its protest. There's a gnawing worry in your gut, probably a combination of heat exhaustion and whatever microscopic creature now calls your body home. You pass a group of boys, barefoot and covered in dirt, who laugh at you as one points to your fancy boots. "You walking like your legs don't work," one says. They are not wrong. You try to find shade again. It's like playing tag with the sun. You hide under the eaves of a building only to be smoked out by someone dumping a bucket of ash water into the alley. You move behind the stables and immediately regret it. The smell of horses in this heat is something special. It sticks to your nose like a wet sock. And of course, there's still no faucet, no water jug, no gas station down the road where you can grab a bottle of lemon-lime electrolyte magic. Here, hydration is survival, literally. You remember reading somewhere that dehydration can hit fast in desert climates. Funny how your brain throws that at you now, right before the headache starts. Historians still argue whether most settlers even realized they were perpetually dehydrated, or whether they just chalked it up to character building. Either way, the Wild West didn't come with water breaks. And the so-called wells around town, half of them are more luck than the science. One local claims his well is blessed by angels. Another says it's probably leaking from a graveyard. No one knows, and no one really cares, as long as it's wet. You pass by the blacksmith, who's hammering out horseshoes in the blazing sun like he's immune to heat. He offers you a tin cup of something suspiciously clear. You ask, "Is it water?" He smirks. Mostly, you decline, which somehow offends him. He mutters something under his breath that includes the word soft. You're starting to think everyone in this town drinks hatred for breakfast. By midday, the heat is at full blast. The wood on the buildings crackles. Even the horses look annoyed. Your sweat has stopped, which a little voice in your head tells you is probably not great. You eye the water trough just for a second. Then you hear a loud snort from a nearby mule and think better of it. Eventually, a wiry old woman sees you staggering and offers you a drink from her rain barrel. It's rainwater that's been sitting in a covered barrel for a few days, maybe weeks. There's a floating leaf, possibly alive. Still, you chug it like it's mineral water in a 5-star spa. It hits your stomach like a rock, but at least it's cold. Cold-ish. She eyes your clothes and mutters, "City folk don't last long." You try to smile, but your lips crack. There's something wild about how central water is out here. Every action, every decision somehow connects back to finding it, keeping it, or not dying without it. In fact, during the actual frontier expansion, water rights were a massive source of conflict. Ranchers, settlers, and rail companies sometimes waged small wars over who got access to a creek. One quirky bit? Some people believed you could witch for water using a forked stick. Dowsing, they called it. A person would hold a twig and walk around until it started twitching in their hands, supposedly pointing toward an underground spring. Was it real? Maybe. Maybe not. Historians still debate whether it worked or was just the result of hopeful dehydration-induced hallucination. You sit down behind the boarding house in a rare patch of shade. Someone's hung laundry above you, shirts and long underwear swaying in the breeze, dripping faint drops of gray water onto your shoulder. You don't even flinch. Free hydration. The town's water tower looms in the distance, a rickety structure built from sun-bleached wood and sheer optimism. You wonder if you could climb it. Maybe just to get a view of something green, maybe to scream. Instead, you get up and trudge to the saloon. Maybe there's something cold in there. Maybe ice, if you're lucky. Maybe just beer. You'd take beer. You'd take lukewarm beer. You'd take a dirty glass of dishwater if it had bubbles. Inside the saloon, it's dark. Cooler. Blessedly cooler. The bartender looks at you like you owe him money. You slide a coin across the bar and say, "Something to drink." He pours a shot of whiskey. You blink. "Is there water?" He laughs. One of those long, wheezy laughs that says no in 100 syllables. You drink the whiskey. It burns like regret going down. You cough. The whole bar watches, but it was wet. A man next to you slaps your back and says, "You'll get used to it." You won't. As the afternoon stretches on, you realize how many decisions today, every step, every conversation has orbited around one simple need: water, and how little of it there is. Not the bottled, clean, crisp kind, just any kind. You remember how back home you used to complain about your building's water pressure? Cute. Now, your skin is tight and hot, your hands are dusty, you haven't peed since sunrise, and you're too scared to try. That's a tomorrow problem. Out on the street again, someone tosses a bucket of leftover bathwater into the road. It splashes near your feet. You wonder just for a moment if you could scoop it up and filter it somehow. Boil it? Let the sun kill the germs? Would charcoal help? Then you remember you have none of those things. All you have is one very questionable stomach and a tin cup. As the sky turns orange, you sit on the edge of a porch and watch the dust swirl in the air. You've survived your first real frontier afternoon. You're dizzy, damp, and demoralized, but alive. Barely. And in the West, that's considered a pretty good day. Your stomach makes a sound like a trapped animal. Not ideal, not comforting, not quiet. It's dusk now, and the sun is dropping behind the hills, leaving everything bathed in a hot bronze glow. You hoped the cooler air would calm your body down, but your gut clearly has other plans. All day, you've had nothing but creek water and those dubious beans from lunch. Your body is staging a full rebellion, and the enemy is you. You ask a passing ranch hand where the nearest bathroom is. He laughs, actually laughs, then points down a trail behind the saloon. There's an outhouse, he says. Try not to fall in. That last part, he isn't joking. You make your way toward it, following a worn path that smells increasingly like, well, you know. The outhouse itself is a tiny wooden box with a door that doesn't quite shut and a crescent moon carved into the front like someone thought that was charming. You open it slowly. It creaks like a horror movie. Inside, the air is violent. There's no plumbing, of course, just a hole and flies, so many flies. There's a pile of newspaper clippings and a corn cob for wiping. Yes, an actual corn cob. Apparently, this was a thing. Quirky tidbit for you. People in the frontier really did use dried corn cobs as toilet paper, not because it was great, because it was what they had. You try not to breathe through your nose. You hover. You regret every life choice that brought you here. And just when you think it's over, a wind gust blows the door open and you lock eyes with a chicken. The chicken wins the staring contest. You survive the ordeal and stumble back into town, traumatized. Your clothes now have a slight outhouse-adjacent scent that you can't unsmell. You give anything for a wet wipe, or a scented candle, or an open sewer grate from a big city. Anything to take the edge off. You learn very quickly that outhouses were not optional in the Wild West. Everyone used them. Some families shared a single pit for years, and those pits had to be dug, maintained, and occasionally relocated by hand. Historians still argue whether these sanitation methods helped reduce disease or simply redistributed it in creative new ways. You pass by a group of women hauling water in tin pails from the creek. One looks at you and says, "It's wash day tomorrow. Don't forget." You blink. You're expected to help? Apparently, yes. The boarding house has a chore chart scratched into a plank of wood by the kitchen. Your name, somehow already added, is next to latrine duty. You feel honored and also personally attacked. Back in your shared room, you collapse onto the bed. Well, it's a bed in the loosest sense of the word. It's a wooden frame with ropes, a thin straw-stuffed mattress, and a pillow that might actually be a sack of flour in disguise. There are 3 other people in the room. One is already asleep and snoring like he's trying to dig his way out of a dream. The other 2 nod curtly. No names, just grunts. You try to close your eyes. You almost doze off. Then your stomach flips. Emergency! You bolt up, grab your boots, and run, full speed, back to the outhouse. You've never run toward an outhouse before. You pray you never do again. You burst inside, barely making it. You lose what little was in your stomach, your pride included. While you're in there, the chicken returns. You don't even fight it this time. It's her turf now. Later, in the moonlight, you sit on the porch and nurse your trauma. Your tin cup is filled with warm water. Your knees are shaky. And you're starting to understand something. The Wild West was never about freedom and romance. It was about function, necessity, and discomfort. One historical fact? In the late 1800s, some larger towns had begun experimenting with sewer systems. But rural areas? Forget it. Waste was handled with buckets, holes, and hope. Cholera outbreaks were common, and bathroom etiquette was loosely defined at best. In fact, many towns had fines for relieving yourself too close to the main street. But enforcement depended heavily on whether the sheriff was awake, sober, or just generally invested. You overhear a man at the saloon telling a story. Someone fell into the outhouse pit last year, took 6 men to haul him out. They buried his clothes and never spoke of it again. He lived, but never recovered emotionally. You feel seen. Back inside the boarding house, you decide to clean up, if you can call it that. There's a wash basin and a small mirror. You pour water from a pitcher into the bowl, splash your face, and scrub with what is essentially a square of burlap. Your reflection in the mirror is alarming. Your hair is matted with sweat and dust. Your eyes look wild. Your expression says, "Please invent the 21st century." You hear someone muttering in the hallway. A woman's voice. "New one's not gonna last," she says. You don't blame her. You dry your face, return to your sack bed, and pull a quilt over you that smells like old stew and mothballs. Outside, a wolf howls, or maybe it's a coyote. Either way, it's not soothing. The man in the bunk next to you rolls over and says, "You flush where you're from?" You nod. He grins. "Ain't that fancy?" You don't respond. You're too busy praying you don't have to use the outhouse again before morning. Morning arrives without your permission. You'd think sleeping on a lump of straw with 3 strangers and a symphony of nocturnal animal sounds would keep you awake all night. And you'd be right. You slept for maybe an hour, mostly with one eye open. At some point, you dreamed you were back home, curled up in your soft bed, hugging your memory foam pillow. Then the rooster screamed directly under your window, and reality hit like a thrown horseshoe. You open your eyes and immediately regret it. The sunlight is already stabbing through the cracks in the wall, turning dust motes into tiny daggers. You try to roll over, but your back protests. Every part of you is sore, especially your thighs. Thank you, hard wooden saddle yesterday. There's a sharp pain behind your right knee. You don't want to know what that is. You stretch. Bad idea. Your neck seizes up. You groan like an old barn door. It's not even 6 a.m. You shuffle downstairs, lured by the faint hope of breakfast. Something hearty, maybe? Eggs? Bread? A hot beverage? Nope. On the table is a pot of beans, again, cold this time. There's also a jar of pickled something, a tin of dry crackers that taste like old bark, and a pot of black liquid that you pray is coffee. You take a sip. It is not coffee. It's a burned mix of acorns and regret. Historians still argue whether frontier coffee was actually drinkable or just a psychological crutch. Some families made do with roasted chicory, dandelion root, or boiled bark, anything that vaguely resembled a warm, bitter fluid. Across the table, a man dips jerky into his cup of coffee-like substance and slurps it with genuine pleasure. You watch in horror as he chews with an audible crack. Your own mouth is dry enough to kindle a fire. You nibble at the cracker and immediately lose part of your molar. You wonder briefly what it would take to invent modern dentistry or oatmeal. Another boarder offers you a piece of bacon. Hope surges. Then you realize it's not bacon, it's salt pork. A brick of meat so salty it could replace road grit in a blizzard. You nod politely and set it down. It breaks the plate. You step outside in search of anything. The sun is already high and hot, and the smell of horses is thick in the air. Somewhere, a man is yelling at a mule. Somewhere else, a woman is using a broom with aggressive purpose. Everyone's moving, working, doing something. You're not, and that's a problem. In the West, idle hands weren't just the devil's playthings. They were a public liability. If you weren't helping, you were a freeloader. And freeloaders didn't last long. You're quickly roped into helping bring in firewood. This involves carrying large, awkward logs from a cart to a shed, then stacking them neatly. You make it 5 logs before your arms begin to tremble. A boy half your size finishes your pile and pats your shoulder sympathetically. You look down. He's barefoot. You are wearing boots and still losing. You try to redeem yourself by helping in the kitchen. The woman in charge hands you a potato and a knife. Peel it. Easy, you think. 30 seconds later, your thumb is bleeding and the potato looks like it's been attacked by wolves. She snatches it away, sighs, and says, "Go sweep the porch." You sweep. Badly. Dust just circles back onto your shoes. You remember a fun fact. Brooms in the 1800s were often handmade from bundled straw or corn husks, and they shed constantly. The one you're holding has 3 straws left. A chicken steals your hat. You give up. You sit on the edge of the porch and consider your options. Your stomach growls again. You eye your tin cup and wonder if it's too early for whiskey. It's not. At least, not here. Back in town, you wander into the store, hoping to buy something, anything to eat that isn't crunchy, salty, or bean-based. The shopkeeper points you to a tin of hardtack. You pry the lid open. It's a block of flour, water, and neglect. Hardtack is basically edible ceramic. Soldiers in the Civil War used it. Most broke it with the butt of a rifle before eating. You try to bite it directly. You fail. A passing cowboy chuckles. Soak it in coffee first. You remember the fake coffee from breakfast. You choose hunger. Outside, someone's roasting corn over a fire. You ask, wide-eyed, if you can try some. They hand you a blackened husk that burns your fingers and offer no further explanation. You peel it back. The kernels are shriveled and smoky. You eat it anyway. It tastes like progress. Still, it's clear. Food in the Wild West was about survival, not satisfaction. Mainstream history paints frontier meals as rustic but hearty. Beans, bread, salted meats, maybe some wild game, but that's only part of it. A quirky historical tidbit. Some families made mock apple pie, using nothing but crackers, vinegar, sugar, and spices, no apples at all. It was a triumph of desperation and imagination. Historians still argue whether pioneer cooks were creative geniuses or simply out of options. By midday, your energy's low and your morale is lower. You sit in the shade, gnawing on a piece of jerky like a sad cartoon raccoon. A man walks by and says, "That's lunch?" You nod. He tosses you a boiled egg. It's warm, slightly green around the yolk. Best thing you've had all day. You eat it with gratitude. As the afternoon fades, you realize you haven't had anything cold since arriving. There's no ice, no refrigeration. If it's hot outside, everything is hot. Food, drink, tempers. The only thing cooler is the creek water, and that's still warmer than a car seat in July. You find yourself dreaming of ice cream, soda, grapes from the fridge. You'd trade your boots for an ice cube. But here, even the cows are sweating. Dinner arrives with less ceremony than lunch. More beans, more salt pork. One woman brings in a pie and sets it on the table. Real pie. Berry pie. The room falls silent. You hold your breath. Then she says, "It's for Sunday. Today is Tuesday." The pie disappears into a pantry, locked away. You almost cry. So you eat beans again, and dry bread, and stare out the window, wondering if anyone in history ever smiled after eating 4 bean meals in a row. Probably not. You decide that if you survive this week, you're never taking food for granted again. You wipe your mouth with the back of your hand and sigh, deeply, dramatically, like a Shakespearean actor who just discovered the pie is for Sunday. Dinner's done. You've eaten approximately 16 beans and half a piece of bread so hard it could double as a roof tile. You lean back on your chair, which creaks ominously, and start fantasizing about food that's not brown. Just as you're mentally composing an ode to frozen yogurt, the town bell rings. "Mail's in!" someone shouts. People shuffle toward the post office like it's Christmas morning. You follow out of habit, though you're not sure why. You haven't exactly been here long enough to receive fan mail, or any mail. But that's not the point. In the Wild West, mail is an event. A letter is gold. It's a tether to the outside world, a rare sliver of something beyond dust and rattlesnakes. People line up outside the tiny shack of a post office, a building barely big enough for 2 people and a stack of regrets. You look around and notice something eerie. Nobody is on their phones. Because, of course, phones haven't been invented yet. No internet, no texts, no memes. You have officially entered a social media blackout so complete that the only tick-tock here is the sound of the town clock, and even that's slightly offbeat. Inside the post office, a man with a vest, monocle, and permanent scowl reads names from a list. No one gets more than 1 letter. Most people get none. You stand at the back and hope they don't notice you. They don't. Outside again, you watch a woman read a letter from her brother. Her hands tremble slightly. Then she smiles. Quiet, real. And for a moment, you feel it too. That connection. Because out here, communication is slow, precious, and deliberate. You can't scroll through someone's life in curated photos. You get 1 page, maybe 2, written in pencil, sometimes smudged. Historians still argue whether this made people closer or lonelier. Did scarcity make the words more meaningful, Or did the silence between letters create distance too vast to cross? You'll ponder that later. Right now, a man slaps you on the back and says, "Welcome to town." You nod. You've technically been here less than 36 hours, but somehow it already feels like a year. He offers you a chew of tobacco. You politely decline. Then he offers you a chunk of something he calls sugar. You accept. It's not sugar. It's molasses taffy, hard as a rock, and it glues itself to your teeth like it's signing a lease. You suck on it anyway because it's vaguely sweet and you haven't had anything resembling a treat since the egg yesterday. As you walk along the boardwalk, you overhear conversations. Most of them are slow, long pauses, minimal drama. People talk about the weather, the crops, that weird bird someone saw yesterday. One man is telling a joke that doesn't have a punchline so much as a confused ending. You chuckle anyway, without phones or distractions. People here actually look at each other, talk, nod. You feel awkward without your usual distractions. No headphone escape, no text to pretend you're reading. Just you and eye contact. Lots of it. You find a bench and sit beside an old man whittling a stick into something. Maybe a duck, maybe a spoon. He doesn't say much. You sit in silence for a few minutes. Then he mutters, "You from back east?" You nod. Thought so. You smell like soap. Fair enough. He offers you a sip from his canteen. You hesitate. But it's cooler than creek water and doesn't taste like sadness, so you drink. It's got a hint of mint. He says his wife soaks mint leaves in the barrel to make it fancy. Fancy is relative. You try to make conversation. Ask him what people do here for fun. He looks at you like you asked where the spaceship is. Fun? You repeat the question. He shrugs. Cards, stories. Sometimes there's a dance. Otherwise you work. Or you nap. You wait. That's it. Cards, stories, dancing, napping. No Netflix. No YouTube rabbit holes. No doom scrolling at 2 a.m. Just people and time and dust. So much dust. You try to imagine explaining the internet to this man. The idea that billions of people constantly share every opinion they've ever had about everything. That you can order a pizza with your thumb and complain about it before it arrives. That you once saw a video of a cat doing taxes. You let it go. He wouldn't believe you anyway. A boy runs by yelling about a snake in the livery stable. A dog barks and chases after him. Someone tosses a boot at the dog. It misses. The boot hits the blacksmith. The blacksmith yells. And just like that, half the town is watching, laughing, or shouting. It's their version of live entertainment. You realize the Wild West is social media. It's just slower, louder, and covered in manure. A quirky historical tidbit. Some frontier towns had gossip benches outside general stores. Folks would sit, swap stories, and subtly insult each other with folksy phrases like, "He's not dumb, but he sure ain't fast." These places were the OG comment sections, except you couldn't delete the rude ones. You head to the saloon for the evening crowd. It's louder now. People have money from the day's work. There's a piano player going hard on the keys, a bartender pouring something with questionable origins, and a few folks arguing over a game of faro. You recognize none of the rules. It looks like poker had a fight with Monopoly and lost. You sit quietly, watch, Absorb. One man offers you a cigar. You shake your head. He nods like that's wise, then offers you his harmonica instead. You take it. It smells like someone's boot, but you puff into it and squeak out a sound. He laughs. You laugh. It's a moment. No screen needed. The night deepens. People start to drift home. A few men sleep right there in their chairs. The bartender doesn't care. The piano slows. The voices quiet. You walk back to your room under a sky so full of stars it looks painted on. No light pollution, no glare, just infinity. You whisper to yourself, "So, this is what boredom feels like." But it's not so bad. The saloon is behind you now, and your boots thud softly along the dirt road as you make your way back to the boarding house. The stars shimmer above like someone poked holes in the sky to let heaven peek through. It's quiet, eerily so. No traffic, no mechanical hum, just the whisper of wind brushing through dry grass and the occasional creak of a loose shutter somewhere. You step onto the porch and freeze. There's a gun just lying there on the bench, a revolver, silver and black, as casually placed as a newspaper. You look around. No one seems concerned. In fact, it might belong to the man sitting next to it, currently picking his teeth with a nail. He sees you staring. "You carry?" he asks, squinting. You shake your head. "Then I'd stay indoors tonight." You laugh nervously. He doesn't. Because here's the thing. In the Wild West, everyone has a gun. It's not weird. It's like owning a hat. Some folks have two. Others carry them in boots, belts, or in long, dusty coats that look like they've seen every Clint Eastwood film and predated them by about 80 years. You walk inside, heart thumping a bit faster now. It's not even about crime, necessarily. Guns are just normal. They're tools, protection, status symbols, and personal statements all in one. Some are sleek and well-oiled. Others look like they were used as a hammer earlier that afternoon. You can hear them clinking from holsters as people move around you. You're very aware that you don't have one. Your modern brain kicks in. What if there's an argument? What if someone gets drunk and twitchy? What if I step on someone's foot by accident and they solve it with bullets? A real historical fact? In many frontier towns, it was technically illegal to carry firearms openly within town limits. But illegal in the Wild West was more of a gentle suggestion, often enforced selectively and only if the sheriff wasn't asleep or gambling. Some towns tried gun checks at saloons, like a coat check, but for your Colt 45. Historians still argue whether these measures helped reduce violence or simply delayed it until everyone got their weapons back. Back in your room, you sit on the edge of the bed and reflect. That's all you can do, really. No phone to scroll, no TV, just your thoughts and the gun thing. You start noticing them more and more. The kid cleaning the stables, a rifle leaning against the hay bales, the preacher at church, tiny pistol tucked under his robe, probably next to the hymnal, the school teacher, sharp eyes, and probably a derringer in her boot. You step outside again to clear your head, only to be met with the unmistakable bang of a gunshot from somewhere near the general store. You duck instinctively, heart in your throat, but no one else seems to panic. Two men stroll by, barely flinching. "Probably old Hank shooting at shadows again," one says. Comforting! Turns out this was fairly normal. Disputes were often settled with fists, then firearms if fists failed. Dueling still happened, bar fights escalating into shootouts, weekly event. And if you got hit, well, you better hope you land on the side of just grazed. One quirky tidbit? In some towns, you could actually buy gunshot insurance. Merchants would pay small premiums to protect against damage from crossfire. Historians still debate whether this was pragmatic or wildly optimistic. You find yourself walking stiffly, nervously. Every creak of leather, every jingle of a spur makes you flinch. You're not used to this. Back home, conflict was passive-aggressive tweets and group chat drama. Here, it's potentially fatal. You step into the saloon again just to observe. Tonight, there's a poker game in full swing. A large man in a wide-brimmed hat slams down a hand of cards and slaps his thigh with glee. Another player frowns, pushes back from the table, and reaches, you guessed it, for his gun. Tension. Silence. Then, the barkeep calmly walks over, leans in, and says something. Probably about rules, or consequences, or cleaning blood off the piano. The gun stays in the holster. The table laughs again. You exhale. Still, that could have gone another way. You ask the bartender if people get shot often. He shrugs. Depends on the season. You clarify. The season? He nods. Gets worse after harvest. More drinking, more cards, less patience. Ah, so you're in danger and learning something. You start to get used to the idea that life out here comes with risk. Constant casual risk. The kind that modern life has bubble-wrapped out of existence. You're suddenly aware that you haven't signed a single waiver since arriving. No safety rails, no lifeguards, no disclaimers, just people, guns, and guesswork. You wonder what would happen if you bought one. A gun, that is. Could you even aim? Load it? Would anyone teach you? Or would they just smirk and say, "Good luck, city kid"? You walk over to the general store, now cautiously open again after that recent bang. Inside, there's a glass case with 2 revolvers, a shotgun, and a box of bullets sitting casually beside a tin of crackers. The clerk sees your expression and chuckles. You thinking of arming up? You hesitate. "Just looking," you reply. He leans forward. You keep looking too long, and someone else might take you for an easy mark. You leave empty-handed, because truth is, you don't want to carry a gun. You're not ready for that responsibility, or the weight, or the moral math that comes with it. Instead, you do the only thing you can do to protect yourself. You sit very still and make no sudden movements. As the night wears on, you notice how many arguments end in silence. Not because people agree, but because nobody wants to be the first to reach for iron. You return to your room, crawl into bed, and pull the blanket up high. You whisper a soft goodnight to the revolver on the nightstand across the room. Not yours, of course, but belonging to the man who sleeps with his hand on it like a child with a teddy bear. The last thing you hear before sleep takes you is the soft click of a hammer being cocked. Just a dream, you hope. You wake up to the sound of horses screaming. Okay, not screaming exactly, but that high-pitched neighing sound that makes your blood pressure spike before your eyes even open. You bolt upright in your cot, heart thumping like it's trying to break parole. There's shouting outside. You throw on your boots, half-laced, and stagger out the door like someone in a sleep-deprived crime reenactment. Turns out someone's horse got spooked. It reared up, broke loose, and bolted straight through the middle of town. A few folks are already chasing it, waving hats and yelling commands that the horse clearly has no interest in obeying. You blink at the dust trail it left behind, then realize something important. You don't know how to ride a horse. This is a problem. Because in the Wild West, horses are not just decoration. They're not a hobby. They're not reserved for equestrian clubs or Pinterest boards. They are transportation. They are livelihood. They are, quite literally, your legs in this world. And yours? You don't have one. Yet. You wander toward the stable trying to appear confident, like someone who knows which end of a horse doesn't kick. A stable boy eyes you warily. He's about 12, barefoot, and chewing a piece of straw like he gets paid to intimidate city folk. You ride? He asks. You hesitate. He snorts. Didn't think so. You ask if there's a horse you can borrow. He laughs again. We got Widow Jenkins' mule. You meet the mule. Its name is Judgment, and it looks like it's personally offended by your existence. You climb into the saddle, or more accurately, onto the saddle, because this mule is tall, and there are no mounting blocks here, only your dignity and a nearby barrel. It takes 3 attempts and 1 minor groin injury, but you manage it. You're now riding a mule. Kind of. You wobble forward in the saddle like a marionette on a broken string. Judgment walks with the slow confidence of a creature who knows you can't make him do anything faster. He pauses every few steps to sigh. You are being judged, indeed. A man passing by tips his hat and says, "Nice seat." You think he means the saddle. He does not. Let's talk basics. Horses and mules were the backbone of the frontier. You didn't just ride them. You lived around them. You watered them, fed them, brushed them, shoed them, named them, cursed them. In some places, horse theft was punishable by death. That's how crucial they were. Historians still argue whether the average frontiersman was actually a skilled rider or just learned to hold on and hope. Either way, riding was not optional. If you wanted to go anywhere, you had 3 choices: walk, ride, or stay home. You nudge Judgment toward the edge of town, where the trail runs along the ridge. The view's incredible. Endless grasslands, distant purple mountains, and skies so wide you feel like a bug in a snow globe. Then Judgment stops, refuses to move. You click your tongue. Nothing. You lightly kick. Nothing. You beg loudly. The mule turns its head slowly, gives you a dead-eyed stare, then scratches its ear with its back hoof. You're starting to get why the Wild West was full of people who drank before noon. A boy rides past on a pony, shouting, "You gotta show it who's boss." You attempt a firm tone. "Let's go." Judgment takes 1 step. Progress. Then, without warning, he turns left, off the trail, and walks straight into a patch of tall grass. You clutch the saddle horn and bounce like a rag doll. Somewhere in the distance, someone's laughing. Eventually, you coax the mule back onto the path, mostly by promising him carrots you do not have. You ride for half an hour, which feels like 5 hours, and return to town, sore in places you didn't know had nerves. Back at the stable, the boy asks, "You keeping him?" You decline, for now. Instead, you sit on a bench and watch the real cowboys ride. And wow, they make it look easy. Smooth, confident, 1 hand on the reins, the other resting on their thigh like they're posing for a statue. One even rides standing up for a moment just to show off. You try not to be impressed. You fail. Quirky tidbit? Saddle design mattered. The Western saddle was actually a brilliant piece of engineering, built for long hours, rope control, and cattle herding. The saddle horn, for example, wasn't decorative. It was where you tied off a lasso after roping a cow. Your saddle, by contrast, appears to have been constructed by someone who hates the human pelvis. You limp back toward the boarding house, feeling about 12 inches shorter. Someone asks if you're okay. You nod. Just walked funny. They squint at you. You rode, didn't you? You nod again. They laugh and say, "Oh, honey, you're going to hate tomorrow." They are right. The next day, everything hurts. Everything, even your eyelashes. But you try again, because that's what people did. You don't just ride once and give up. You build the skill, slowly, painfully, one sore backside at a time. You begin to notice how many people out here are defined by their relationship with their horse, or mule, or oxen, if you're particularly unlucky. Some talk to them like family. Others trust them more than other humans. And honestly, after seeing what humans are like out here, you get it. Historians still debate whether the Wild West's obsession with horses was born from necessity or if it eventually became romanticized beyond all reason. Either way, you now understand why Westerns always have that one slow-motion shot of someone galloping across a field. Because once you can ride, really ride, it feels like flying. You're not there yet. But hey, you only fell off once today. By day 4, your thighs feel like they've been through a medieval torture device. You wake up with a groan, shuffle like a crypt keeper to the wash basin, and glare at your reflection. The mirror does not lie. You are becoming a different person out here, and not in the glow-up sense. More like a survival reality show contestant who's just learned the worms bite back. You pull on your boots and make your way outside, where the town is already humming with activity. It's market day. That means one thing: trading. Forget swipeable price tags or barcodes. Today is all about the art of negotiation, haggling, and pretending you know what a goose is really worth. You arrive at the town square, which has been transformed into a bustling patchwork of makeshift stalls, crates, and wagons. People are calling out prices, shoving vegetables into each other's arms, and arguing loudly over the relative freshness of eggs. One woman is bartering 3 loaves of bread for a hand-knit scarf. Another's trading a live chicken for a bottle of something murky in a brown glass jar. It's chaos, but it's organized chaos, like a flea market with stronger smells and more goats. You walk cautiously between the stalls. Everything here has been grown, built, raised, sown, or scavenged. There's no mass production, no factory shrink wrap, no plastic at all. It's oddly beautiful, and also wildly inconvenient. A grizzled man with 3 teeth tries to sell you a pair of worn boots. You already have boots, but he insists these are better because they once belonged to a dead outlaw. You decline. He sweetens the deal. You can still see the bullet hole. Tempting. You walk away quickly. Nearby, a young girl holds out a pie and says, 10 cents or 2 buttons. You reach into your pocket and realize you have neither. Just a piece of lint, a nail, and whatever's left of your self-respect. The pie vanishes back under a cloth like it never existed. Bartering in the Wild West wasn't just common, it was crucial. Coins were scarce, especially small denominations, and paper money was often distrusted, and rightfully so. Counterfeit bills were rampant. So people got creative. They traded eggs for candles, aprons for cornmeal, or socks for a haircut. You quickly learn that your value in town has less to do with who you are and more to do with what you can offer. You try to trade the nail in your pocket for a pickle. The seller stares at you for 5 full seconds and says, "Get a shovel." Fair enough. Mainstream historical fact? The federal government didn't establish a reliable currency system until well after the Civil War, and frontier economies often operated semi-independently. That meant deals were personal, flexible, and sometimes downright weird. You witness one man trade a chicken for a harmonica lesson. Another swaps 3 jars of honey for a haircut and a dance. You watch a woman walk away proudly holding a single new boot. Just one. She doesn't even limp. You choose not to ask. There's a strange kind of fairness to it all. A loaf of bread might cost a day's labor. A coat might be the product of 3 good trades and 2 months of saving. Everything has weight. Everything matters. You spot a vendor with a sign that says, "Teeth pulled, 2 cents." That doesn't seem like a deal. You get closer, and sure enough, there's a man with suspiciously clean hands holding a pair of metal pliers. Next to him is a wooden chair and a bucket that you really don't want to look inside. You ask how he learned dentistry. He shrugs. Mostly guesswork, quirky tidbit. Frontier dentistry was often done by barbers, blacksmiths, or anyone willing to pull a tooth. Anesthetic? Ha! If you were lucky, they gave you whiskey. If not, they just held you down and hoped you didn't bite them back. Historians still argue whether this rough-and-ready approach actually worked, or if people just got used to pain. Either way, you make a mental note to choose softly for the rest of your stay. Across the square, you see a group of kids playing marbles. You approach cautiously. Last time you tried talking to a child here, he challenged you to arm wrestle and won. This time, they ask if you have anything to trade for a turn. You search your pockets and offer your only button. It's accepted. You kneel down, flick a marble, and completely miss. The kids laugh. One of them pats your shoulder and says, "You're not from here, huh?" You smile. Not even close. One of the local women notices your awkward stance and asks if you'd like to learn how to make candles. You agree immediately, partially because it's useful, but mostly because your legs still hurt from riding and you'd rather sit down. She hands you a string, a pot of melted tallow, and instructions. It's repetitive. Dip, dry, dip again. And yes, it smells like old meat, but there's something weirdly soothing about it. Meditative even. She tells you how every household had to make their own candles, how beeswax was rare, and how most light came from animal fat unless you were rich or a thief. It hits you that nothing here comes easily. Light, heat, food, everything has a cost, measured not in money, but in effort. As the sun begins to dip, the market starts winding down. People pack up their stalls. Chickens are herded back into crates. Someone's playing a fiddle somewhere off to the side. It's out of tune, but no one seems to mind. You sit on the porch of the general store holding your freshly dipped candle. It's lumpy and off-centered and smells faintly of beef stew. But it's yours. And that's something. It's official. You stink. The realization hits somewhere between brushing your teeth with a twig and trying to scrub your armpits with a damp cloth that smells like it lost a fight with mildew. You lift your arm, sniff cautiously, and immediately recoil like you've just inhaled a skunk's autobiography. It's time to bathe, which, out here, is not a luxury. It's a logistical operation. You ask the boarding house matron about the bath situation. She eyes you for a second, sniffs lightly, just to confirm, and then points out back. There's a tub, firewood stacked by the barrel. You haul the water, you heat it, you clean it up after. And don't be stingy with the lye soap. You nod. You regret it. Behind the house, you find the bath setup. It's a metal tub, half rusted and dented, sitting inside a wooden shed that has maybe 3 full walls. There's a barrel of water nearby, cold of course, and a stove with a large iron pot for heating. You begin hauling water, bucket by bucket, from the barrel to the pot. It's heavy. Your arms burn. You spill half of it on your boots. But slowly, surely, the pot fills. You light a fire beneath it. The smoke drifts lazily up through a crooked chimney. You wait. The water takes forever to heat. While you wait, you notice an old bar of soap, chipped and gnawed at the edges like someone mistook it for jerky. That's the lye soap they mentioned. A real historical fact? Lye soap was common in the 1800s, made from animal fat and wood ash. It was rough, like sandpaper in bar form. Effective, yes, but gentle? Absolutely not. Historians still argue whether it was more effective at removing dirt or self-esteem. Finally, the water's hot. You carefully pour it into the tub, mixing it with cold water until it's just shy of scalding. You test it with your hand. It feels tolerable. You undress quickly before your nerves catch up to your better judgment, and lower yourself in. The tub groans under your weight. So do you. It's not spacious. You are folded into a lumpy human soup dumpling, knees to chest. But the water is warm, and the sensation of dirt lifting from your skin is, dare you say, heavenly. You scrub. You lather. You attack every crevice like you're evicting squatters. You use the soap sparingly because it bites back. There's a point where you're unsure if the sting is from the heat or the soap, or just a buildup of unspoken guilt. Quirky tidbit? Some frontier folks only bathed once a week. Saturdays were unofficial bath day. Others waited even longer, especially in winter, when heating water was nearly impossible. Perfume, herbs, and simply standing downwind were the only hope. You rinse off using a bucket of cold water, which is so shocking it nearly sends you into next week. But hey, you're clean now. Mostly. You wrap yourself in a thin towel that could pass for a slightly oversized napkin and step outside, just as a gust of wind hits. You dry off real fast. As you dress, you hear someone approaching. It's one of the neighbors, a woman in an apron and boots. She tips her hat and says, "You might want to hang a sign next time. You're going to have a line." Apparently, bathing is that rare. Back inside, you feel like a new person. Sure, you're still sore, still dusty from the walk back to the house, and your towel smells faintly like pickles. But compared to yesterday, you're royalty. You proudly enter the common room. Someone sniffs. You bathed. You nod smugly. They nod back, respectful. Because out here, personal hygiene is a status symbol. There's a kind of badge of honor quality to it. Being clean isn't expected. It's impressive. The conversation shifts to bath stories. One man brags about finding a hot spring once. Another swears he bathed in a rainstorm with soap strapped to his hat. A third claims he hasn't bathed in months, but still smells like cedar. He does not. You ask where people usually clean themselves. Answers vary. Creek if it's warm, Rain if it's hard enough. Wipe with snow. Borrow your neighbor's tub and offer 'em pie after. You also learned something unsettling. Many folks shared bath water. Entire families would take turns in the same tub. First the father, then the mother, then the kids. Oldest to youngest. By the end, it was more soup than soak. The phrase, "Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater?" Yeah, it came from that exact scenario. Historians still debate whether sharing bathwater was practical or simply unavoidable, but either way, you vow never to complain about your apartment shower pressure again. Feeling brave, you ask about other hygiene practices. Tooth care, baking soda and crushed charcoal. Some folks just used twigs with frayed ends. Mouthwash was a luxury, if it existed at all. Your modern teeth begin to throb sympathetically. Hair care, lard, ash, or river rinses. Shampoo was a myth. Conditioner? A cruel dream. Hats weren't just fashion. They were protection, style, and portable privacy screens for bad hair days. As for deodorant, laughs in frontier. People masked odors with herbs, lemon peels, or just didn't. You were supposed to smell like someone who worked all day in the sun. It was considered honest. Still, once a week, or even once a month, people would go all out. Full wash, haircut, beard trim. You realize that's probably what they're doing today. There's a dance tonight. Yes, a real community gathering. Music, food, and awkward courtship rituals lit by lanterns. You decide to attend, because if you're going to survive the Wild West, you might as well experience everything, even if it means wearing stiff clothes, pretending to know how to waltz, and maybe, just maybe, dancing with someone who can smell that you've finally bathed. Evening falls like a velvet curtain, slow and heavy, the sky melting into rich purples and dusty golds. The town begins to flicker alive with the soft orange glow of lanterns, each one swinging gently in the breeze like sleepy fireflies tethered to porches and posts. You button your shirt, poorly, as the top button seems intent on declaring independence, and run a hand through your somewhat clean hair. The remnants of your bath have clung on despite the town's ever-present dust. You don't look fancy exactly, but by Wild West standards, you're a debutante. You head toward the gathering near the church, where benches have been cleared and tables set up. There's music already, a fiddle, a banjo, and something vaguely percussive that might be a jug. The sound is cheerful and jagged, as if the instruments are drunk but in a good mood. A girl with a braid down to her waist twirls barefoot in the dirt. A man claps in time, slapping his knee like it owes him money. Laughter spills through the air like warm syrup. You catch yourself smiling. This is the social event of the week, and if you don't dance, you'll stand out faster than a vegetarian at a cattle auction. You find a spot near the punch bowl. It's unclear what the punch is made of, but it bubbles ominously and smells like apples, vinegar, and mild regret. You sip. It's strong. You sip again. It's very strong. Possibly weaponized. Someone taps your shoulder. It's an older woman with keen eyes and zero tolerance for nonsense. "You know how to waltz?" she asks. You do not. She nods anyway. You'll learn. Suddenly, you're in the center of a small dirt clearing, hand in hers, the music swinging upward like it just noticed you. She counts aloud. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Your boots shuffle. Your brain stalls. Your dignity leaks slightly, but you don't fall, and that's a win. The Wild West version of social life was all about showing up. Participation was valued over polish. People weren't looking for elegance. They wanted energy, effort, liveliness. If you tripped over your own foot but laughed about it, you were in. A real historical fact. Dances and community events were among the few structured social outlets in frontier towns. These gatherings offered not just entertainment, but also a chance to find a spouse, trade gossip, or simply feel human again after a week of brutal isolation. The music continues. Partner swap. You find yourself dancing with a teen, then an old man with surprisingly smooth moves, then a girl who laughs when you step on her foot. Twice. No one seems to mind that you're awkward, or clearly not from around here. In fact, they seem to like it. There's a camaraderie to it, a collective exhale. You sit down on a barrel near the musicians to catch your breath. Your shirt clings to your back. Your cheeks are flushed. Your feet ache. But it's a good ache, the kind you earn. Nearby, a man begins telling a story. The crowd quiets. He speaks slowly, rhythmically, his voice rising and falling like a lullaby wrapped in gunpowder. He's describing a cattle drive gone wrong, 2 weeks in the rain, lost supplies, a thunderstorm that nearly swept them off a cliff. It's dramatic, dusty, and probably only partly true. But no one interrupts, because out here, storytelling is sacred. It's entertainment, it's memory, it's how news travels, how history is preserved, how lies become legends, and truths stretch their arms a bit. Quirky tidbit? Frontier towns often had unofficial storytellers, people whose job, whether acknowledged or not, was to spin yarns by firelight. Some were travelers, some were war veterans, others were just chatty. But they were treasured. You ask if you can tell one next. The group shrugs. Only if it's a good one. You hesitate, then launch into your falling off the mule tale. It kills. People are laughing, slapping their knees, wiping tears. The kids giggle. Even Judgment the Mule gets mentioned like an old friend. It's a bonding moment, stitched together with dust and shared embarrassment. You're handed a slice of pie as a reward. Actual pie. Sweet, warm, slightly burnt, but delicious. A woman pats your shoulder and says, "You're one of us now." It hits you then. Social life out here is about proximity and perseverance. You show up. You do your best. You dance badly. You tell a story. You get pie. No algorithms. No curated highlight reels. Just presence. Historians still argue whether frontier society was more connected than modern life, or just connected differently. Less Polish, more authenticity. Less reach, more roots. The music slows. Couples sway. Stars spill across the sky like someone shook up the Milky Way and forgot to clean it up. You sit back, full of pie and adrenaline, and realize this might be the best party you've ever attended, where half the guests are wearing hand-me-down boots and carrying concealed weapons. You lean against a post. Close your eyes. The fiddle fades into the night like a memory just out of reach. You're not checking your phone. You're not checking your email. You're just here. And somehow, that's enough. You wake the next morning with straw in your hair, dust in your boots, and what can only be described as a pie hangover. It's unclear whether you slept in your cot or simply collapsed next to it. But either way, Your back protests like a union on strike. You stretch, yawn, and take a moment to reflect. You danced, told a story, made people laugh, and no one shot at you. By Wild West standards, that's a banner night. But today's not about dancing. Today is about work. Real, physical, soul-denting labor. The kind that leaves splinters in your fingers and sweat in places you didn't know had pores. You step outside into the rising sun. The town is already in motion. Wagons roll past carrying sacks of grain. Women carry buckets. Kids chase chickens, possibly for fun, possibly for dinner. A man with a bandana and a mustache that deserves its own zip code is chopping wood with alarming aggression. You're told there's a fence to fix. You're not exactly handy. The last time you assembled something was an IKEA shelf, and even that leaned like it was emotionally overwhelmed. But out here, everyone pitches in. You can't hide behind job titles. There's no such thing as a communications consultant in a town where the cows outnumber the people. You're handed a hammer, a pouch of nails, and pointed toward a field. The fence in question is more suggestion than structure. A few posts remain upright. Most are leaning like they've had a rough night. Some are missing altogether, possibly stolen by enterprising beavers. You meet your work partner, a wiry older man named Lyle, who smells like tobacco and practical advice. "You ever split a rail?" he asks. You haven't. "You ever hold a hammer?" You nod cautiously. "Good. Swing it like you mean it." The next several hours blur into a montage of hammering, hauling, grunting, and creatively restraining yourself from throwing tools into the sky. You drive nails crooked. You drop a post on your foot. Lyle laughs once, just once, and it's when you nearly fall backward into a patch of thistles. Real historical fact. Frontier labor was unrelenting. Without modern equipment, tasks like fencing, barn raising, or well digging required entire communities and entire days. If you didn't do it, it didn't get done. And that usually meant no food, no water, or worse, a cow invasion. You stop to rest under a scrawny tree. Lyle hands you a tin cup of water. It tastes like iron and dirt and salvation. "You'll be sore tomorrow," he says. "I'm sore now." He nods, satisfied. You ask him how people handled the sheer volume of labor. "Simple," he says. "They didn't stop. The Wild West didn't have weekends. Days blurred together, dictated more by weather and crops than calendars. If it rained, you adjusted. If it snowed, you panicked. But otherwise, it was up with the sun, down with the moon, and every minute in between spent doing something useful. Quirky tidbit? Idle hands are the devil's workshop? Wasn't just a moral saying. It was a genuine fear. Many believed that laziness led to crime, mischief, or worse. Talking back to your elders. Historians still argue whether frontier work built character or broke people down slowly like a leaky faucet on the soul. There's evidence for both. Journals from the era show incredible resilience and incredible burnout. Later, you'll help a woman churn butter. She hands you a wooden paddle and tells you to stir. That's it. Just stir. So you do, for 40 minutes. Your arms go numb. Your back locks up. You start hallucinating voices in the butter. You question your life choices. She checks the consistency, nods approvingly, and says, "Not bad for a first-timer." You beam. Then she dumps it into a cloth and tells you to start again for the second batch. You whimper softly. By sundown, you've hammered 27 nails, lifted 12 fence posts, and churned 2 batches of butter. You smell like wood smoke and cow. But there's a strange sense of accomplishment sticking to you like the dust under your fingernails. You see a group gathering near the general store, so you limp over to investigate. Turns out, there's going to be a barn raising tomorrow. Yes, an entire barn, built in a day. Because that's what communities did. They showed up, brought tools, shared food, and raised structures from nothing using grit, muscle, and mild yelling. You volunteer immediately, not because you're qualified, but because now, somehow, you want to be. You walk back to the boarding house under a sky that glows with the last blush of daylight. Your hands ache, your legs tremble. There's hay in your shirt and a hammer mark on your thumb. But you've never felt more grounded. No spreadsheets, no emails, no meetings. Just work. Real, immediate, visible work. You did a thing, and tomorrow you'll do another. And hey, maybe next time your fence won't lean like it's had 4 whiskeys and a bad breakup. At dawn, the world is golden, not metaphorically, actually golden. The sunlight spills over the hills like someone tipped over a jar of honey. The town breathes in slow rhythm, barns creaking awake, roosters announcing their unsolicited opinions, and smoke rising from chimneys like sleepy question marks. Today is barn-raising day. You arrive at the site early, hoping to make a good impression, but you're already late. Somehow, the entire town has beaten you here. There's a sea of flannel, suspenders, sun-worn hands, and coffee breath. Kids chase each other between beams. Women lay out food on picnic blankets. Dogs weave underfoot, supervising. The sight? An empty patch of dirt, some scattered lumber, and a team of oxen tied to a wagon full of logs the size of small cars. You gulp. A man named Hank hands you a mallet the size of your head and grins. Ever built a barn? You shake your head. Well, he says, slapping you on the back hard enough to reset your spine. Now's your chance. There's no blueprint, no engineer, no pre-cut kit. Just people. Some cut beams to length. Others dig post holes. A few start assembling the frame like a giant wooden skeleton. You're tasked with lifting support beams and not crying in public. A real historical fact? Barn raisings were essential communal events in 19th century America. Not just chores, but rituals, where neighbors gathered, worked, gossiped, ate, and sometimes met future spouses while holding up a rafter together. You lift, you carry, you sweat. You learn quickly that teamwork here isn't optional. It's survival. Everyone has a job. Everyone depends on everyone else. And if you mess up, the consequences could be heavy, painful, and shaped like a falling roof. Your first real task is holding a beam steady while others nail it in place. It sounds simple, right? It's not. The beam is heavy, the sun is relentless, and the man beside you keeps calling you butter arms. Still, it goes up, and another, and another. By midday, the frame stands tall, like a rib cage waiting to grow skin. It casts a proud, jagged shadow across the earth. Someone rings a cowbell. That means food. Everyone gathers at the makeshift picnic area. There's cornbread, stew, pickles, apple slices, and something that might be meatloaf, though no one's confident. You sit in the grass, dust in your eyebrows, arms trembling, and eat like someone who's just run 10 marathons and fought a bear in between. You listen to the talk. It's light, warm, layered with laughter. Someone's telling a story about the last barn raising, how the preacher nailed his boot to the floor by mistake and had to preach barefoot for a month. You chuckle. They accept you. Quirky tidbit? Some communities turned barn raisings into contests. Who could build faster, straighter, or with fewer broken fingers? One town even kept a barn trophy. A horseshoe on a stick passed to the fastest crew. After lunch, you're invited to the roof crew. You hesitate. Hank raises an eyebrow. So, up you go. It's high. It sways. Your stomach does somersaults. But you hammer shingles like your life depends on it, which, frankly, it might. You try not to look down. You fail. You look down. You regret it. But you keep going. You're learning something important. Fear doesn't stop the job. It just means you hammer slower at first. Historians still debate whether barn raising was more efficient or symbolic. Sure, you got a structure built, but more importantly, you built relationships, trust, shared memory, a physical legacy of cooperation. By evening, the barn stands tall, not finished, but solid, real, touched by dozens of hands, yours included. There's a small cheer. Someone starts playing a harmonica. A few kids dance. You sit on an overturned bucket, sipping lemonade, watching shadows stretch across the earth like sleepy giants. Your hands are blistered. Your arms hum with soreness. You're pretty sure there's sawdust in your lungs. But you helped build something permanent, something that will last longer than any email, TikTok, or grocery store receipt. A place where animals will sleep, tools will hang, and hay will be stacked into small mountains. You were part of that, and that matters. You walk home as the stars blink on one by one. Along the path, someone falls into step beside you. It's the preacher. He nods. Good work today. You thank him, still catching your breath. He says, it's hard the first time. You nod. But the second time, he says, is even harder. 'Cause now you know what it takes, and you come back anyway. You both laugh. The night is cool, crisp, and full of crickets. Your boots crunch softly over the path. In the distance, the new barn gleams faintly under moonlight, unfinished, but alive, just like you. Your muscles whisper mutiny when you wake. Every joint creaks. Your arms are so sore, lifting the blanket feels like a deadlift attempt. You groan, roll over, and immediately regret it. Congratulations. You survived your first barn raising. But today is no rest day. Because today, you ride shotgun. Now, to clarify for the 21st century listener, no, you're not choosing a car seat on a family road trip. In the Wild West, riding shotgun meant sitting beside the stagecoach driver, usually with an actual shotgun on your lap, and the full-time job of not getting killed by bandits, wild animals, or gravity. You trudge outside, breakfast biscuit in one hand, pride still marinating from yesterday. The stagecoach is already being loaded. Stacks of crates, sacks of flour, and one very grumpy goat are being shoved inside with no sense of order, just sheer brute force and guesswork. The driver is a lean man with sun-leathered skin, a wide hat, and a face like he's been disappointed by life and coffee in equal measure. He looks at you, nods once, and says, "Climb up. Keep your eyes open and don't point that thing at me. He hands you a shotgun. It is heavy and very, very real. You climb up onto the high wooden seat, no seatbelt, obviously, and instantly feel like you're balancing on top of a galloping dinosaur. The coach rocks, even while still, its wheels creaking ominously beneath the weight of both passengers and poor life choices. Then the driver snaps the reins, and you're off. Instant chaos. The horses charge forward like they owe someone money. The coach jolts, bounces, and sways with the grace of a drunk rhino. You clutch the shotgun with both hands, wondering if you'll survive long enough to ever need to use it. Dust rises behind you in a cloud thick enough to choke philosophy. The wind slaps your face, your hat threatens mutiny, and your teeth rattle so hard you're considering charging rent. The driver yells over the noise, "Ever shot one of those?" You shout back, "Does duck hunt count?" He squints at you. "What's a duck hunt?" You nod. Exactly. Let's pause for a little real-world history. Stagecoaches were the Amazon prime of the 1800s. They delivered people, mail, money, and occasionally livestock across unforgiving terrain. And because they were valuable and vulnerable, they were frequent targets for outlaws, hence the need for shotgun messengers. Quirky tidbit? Some shotgun riders were former lawmen, ex-soldiers, or just folks who could hit a rattlesnake mid-slither. Others? Total amateurs with nerves of steel, or just nothing left to lose. But all of them had to be alert. Bandits didn't call ahead. You grip the weapon tighter. A few miles in, you hit your first bump, literally. The coach bounces off a rut in the road and launches you several inches into the air. When you land, you discover two things. One, your spine now clicks when you breathe, and two, the shotgun is still in your lap, thank heavens. The driver grunts. That was a good one. You nod, too breathless to respond. The landscape rolls past. Dry grasslands, jagged rocks, hills that seem to lean in just a bit too close. A few jackrabbits dart by. Buzzards circle above like overly invested spectators. Then suddenly, the driver pulls back the reins. The coach slows. He leans forward. You follow his gaze. Ahead on the trail is a fallen log, wide, fresh-looking, suspiciously placed. He mutters, "That wasn't here yesterday." Your stomach tightens. He unholsters his pistol. You thumb the safety on your shotgun, which, surprise, doesn't exist. This isn't a video game. This is real wood, real iron, real stakes. You scan the landscape, eyes darting to every bush, every shadow. Your heartbeat drums in your ears like an old telegraph machine on overdrive. Then, nothing. No bandits, no masked men, no ambush. The driver shrugs. Probably wind. You exhale. It smells like dust and goat. The rest of the journey is less dramatic, but just as exhausting. The sun scorches your neck. Your lips dry to the texture of overcooked bacon. You shoot a look at the goat in the back. It bleats mockingly. You stop at a small mail station to drop off a crate marked fragile. It's kicked off the wagon like an unwanted guest. No one bats an eye. The driver offers you jerky from his coat pocket. You decline. It looks like it predates your ancestors. You arrive back in town by late afternoon, covered in dust, arms aching, ears ringing, and somehow exhilarated. You climbed into a moving fortress. You watched the trail. You rode shotgun. Historians still argue whether the role was mostly ceremonial or actually life-saving. Some stagecoaches were attacked weekly. Others went years without trouble. But one thing's clear. Riding shotgun meant being responsible for everyone else's safety. And now you understand why that seat wasn't just the front row. It was a trust fall on wheels. As you step down from the coach, someone asks, "See anything exciting?" You shake your head. "Just dust." They grin. "You ain't lived till you've seen dust and bullets." You hand back the shotgun, fingers still trembling, and walk home knowing two things for sure. Stagecoaches are a chiropractor's worst nightmare. Tomorrow, you're sleeping in. Your plan to sleep in? Foiled. At exactly 5:12 a.m., you're awoken by the musical screech of a rooster screaming its soul into the sky, directly outside your window. You briefly consider retaliation. Then remember, the rooster has a job, and apparently, so do you. Today, you're shadowing the town's general store clerk. You stretch your sore arms, toss on a shirt that still smells faintly of butter and regret, and head down the street. The sun hasn't even cleared the rooftops yet, but the town's already stirring. People hauling buckets, opening shutters, feeding animals. At the general store, the bell above the door jingles as you enter. The clerk is already there, balancing on a crate while trying to reach a tin of beans on a high shelf. "Morning," he says, not turning around. "You the helper?" "I guess." "You know how to count?" "Usually." "Good enough. Grab the ledger." And with that, your day begins. The general store is the beating heart of any frontier town. Not just a place to buy things, but a place to talk, to trade news, to hear who's feuding with who, and to spend that precious handful of coins you've been saving since spring. The store itself smells like sawdust, dry goods, and something pickled that shouldn't be pickled. Shelves line every wall, stacked with flour, coffee beans, lye soap, nails, rope, hats, and, oddly, 2 live chickens in a crate labeled "Do Not Open" again. The floorboards groan like they're tired of being stepped on. A pot-bellied stove warms the corner. The counter is scarred from decades of elbows and spilled molasses. Your first job: reorganize the inventory. This is less tidying up and more archaeology. Behind the salt, you find a jar of leeches. Behind the leeches, a family of spiders who really don't appreciate the interruption. While brushing cobwebs off a barrel of flour, you knock over a crate labeled "Buttons and Regrets." It spills everywhere. You spend the next 20 minutes chasing rolling buttons like a tiny stampede of plastic sheep. Eventually, the first customer arrives. A woman with a toddler on her hip and a gaze that could melt steel. "I need 6 pounds of beans," she says. You start scooping beans from the burlap sack, hoping she won't notice how your hands are shaking. You drop the scale. She sighs deeply, the way only frontier mothers and exhausted teachers can. The clerk returns from the back. "Try not to weigh your thumb," he says. "We don't sell you." Mainstream historical fact? In frontier general stores, items were sold in bulk. There were no brands, no packaging. You didn't buy a can of beans, you bought beans. By weight. You didn't grab a shampoo bottle. You asked for lye soap and hoped for the best. Many customers bartered. Some had store credit. A few just lingered, chatting endlessly while pretending to browse. Quirky tidbit. Stores often had wish books, catalogs from companies like Sears, where townsfolk could order everything from corsets to coffins. Some folks treated the catalog like entertainment. reading it aloud by candlelight as if it were a novel. You get better as the morning rolls on. You can now measure sugar without creating a dust storm. You've stopped flinching at the sound of the bell, and you've learned that the most requested item in the store is gossip. Mrs. Harris claims the blacksmith is courting the widow Thompson. Mr. Everett insists he saw a mountain lion near the creek, though he also swears his dog plays poker. A traveling peddler swears up and down that he's seen a ghost horse, a pale stallion that gallops across the plains at night and leaves no tracks. You ask if the horse is hiring. Historians still argue whether general stores were more retail spaces or social hubs. Some claim they were vital to survival. Others point to journals that describe them as a place to sit, spit, and talk nonsense until you forgot why you came in. At midday, a shipment arrives. 4 barrels of nails, 1 bag of apples, and a mystery box marked "Handle with mild indifference." You help unload. The apples are bruised, the nails are scattered. The box contains 20 porcelain dolls with eyes that definitely watch you move. The clerk shrugs. "We'll sell 'em." You man the counter for an hour. It's intense. A man wants 10 feet of rope and tries to pay with a harmonica. A kid asks if he can trade a frog for licorice. A woman insists the molasses is cursed because it flows backwards during thunderstorms. You write it down just in case. The register is a wooden drawer with a tin box of coins. Every transaction is logged by hand. Math becomes your mortal enemy. A boy asks for penny candy. You hand him a jawbreaker the size of your fist. He leaves smiling, tongue already blue. You feel like Santa. Later, the clerk teaches you to make change, a forgotten art in a world of digital payments. You fumble through the coins, panic slightly, and eventually hand over the correct amount. Probably. As the sun dips, the store slows. You sweep the floor, restock the beans, and rescue one of the chickens from under the Cracker Barrel. You're covered in flour, cobwebs, and the faint aura of someone who sold 10 pounds of nails and still doesn't know what they're for. But as the clerk closes the register and blows out the lamp, he nods at you. "Not bad," he says. "Didn't break anything important." High praise. You step outside. The bell jingles behind you. In your hand is a small pouch of coins. Your pay for the day. Barely enough for a shirt, but more than enough for a sense of pride. You realize something else. The general store isn't just where you buy stuff. It's where you learn who people are, what they need, what they fear, what makes them laugh or linger or lie. It's the town's memory. And today, you got to be part of it. Evening rolls in wearing a cool breeze and a sky stitched with stars. You walk home with tired feet and a mind buzzing with conversations from the general store. You made change, you sold rope, and you survived the chicken incident without permanent damage. That's a win. But there's no time for rest, because tonight you're learning how to keep the peace. That's right. You're riding with the town sheriff. He shows up just after supper, tall, quiet, hat brim low. A man who speaks in sentences so short they feel like warnings. His badge catches the lantern light. His boots make no sound. He nods once and simply says, "Come on, you go." His name's Grady. He's been sheriff for 11 years. Says he's been shot at 12 times, once by his own horse. "Misunderstanding," he mutters. You follow him down the street, past shuttered shops and creaky porches. The town at night is different, quieter, slower, but not safer. There's always something after dark, Grady says. Drunks, fights, coyotes, ghosts, if you believe in that kind of thing. You don't answer, mostly because you might believe in that kind of thing. Your first stop, the saloon. Outside, music and laughter spill into the street like a tipped barrel of rowdy energy. The doors swing open. A man stumbles out, hiccuping in triplets, pants mysteriously missing. Stan again, Grady sighs. You help the sheriff guide Stan back inside, where he's gently deposited into a chair and handed a cup of what looks like brown regret. The piano player never stops. Cards slap the table. A woman in a green dress with too much lipstick gives you a wink that lasts a few heartbeats too long. You try not to trip over your own dignity. A real historical fact, saloons were the social nucleus of most frontier towns. More than just watering holes, they were unofficial town halls, courtrooms, and news stations. Deals were made, fights were fought. Songs were born and quickly forgotten. Grady talks to the barkeep. You lean against the wall, trying to look tougher than you feel. A man nearby claims he once arm-wrestled a mountain lion. Another insists he saw Billy the Kid last week, selling socks in Dodge City. You listen, you absorb. You start to understand. Everyone here plays a role. Back outside, the streets are nearly empty. You patrol slowly, your boots scuffing the dirt, your eyes scanning shadows that shift and sigh with every gust of wind. You always walk the whole town, you ask. Grady nods. Every night. Keeps people honest. How often does something bad happen? He shrugs. Bad happens every day, but if you're lucky, it waits till morning. Suddenly, a scream. You both spin toward the sound. It's coming from the boarding house. You sprint behind Grady, heart slamming, adrenaline lighting up your veins like fireworks. You find a woman pointing at her window. "Someone stole my pies," she shrieks. 3 whole apple pies. Gone! Grady examines the scene. Windowsill empty. Crumbs everywhere. Tracks, small, muddy, suspiciously chicken-like. He sighs. Might not have been people. He thanks the woman, promises to look into it, and walks away as she grumbles about varmints and vengeance. You investigate pie theft? You ask. Grady nods. Pies today, cattle tomorrow. Don't laugh. It's all part of peace. Quirky tidbit? In some towns, the sheriff had to handle everything. Law, livestock, lost children, stolen pies, and occasionally runaway weddings. One sheriff famously arrested his own brother for stealing a cow. Another refused to carry a gun, preferring a very persuasive stick. You visit the jail next. It's a one-room shack with 2 cells, a wooden desk, and a cot that looks like it hates everyone who lies on it. One man is snoring in a cell, boots still on. Grady says he's harmless, just drinks too much and swears at trees. You sit at the desk. Grady pours coffee from a pot that's older than you and tastes like charred boots. You sip anyway. It's oddly comforting. He starts going through reports, mostly complaints. Someone thinks the barber is spying on them. Someone else is convinced their pig is haunted. One letter accuses the town school teacher of witchcraft because she reads too fast. You offer to sort them by legitimate and probably wrote this drunk. He says, same pile. Historians still argue whether frontier sheriffs were heroes or placeholders. Some were legends, sure, but many were just whoever drew the short straw. Underpaid, overworked, often outgunned, they had to walk a line between lawman, politician, and therapist. As midnight approaches, the town falls fully asleep. Lanterns dim. Chickens mutter in their coops. Even the saloon quiets, replaced by the distant hoot of an owl and the soft plink of wind hitting shutters. You and Grady sit in silence for a while. Then he says, "You can't stop trouble, but you can show up when it knocks." It's not advice exactly. It's more of a truth that just sort of lands. You look out the window. The streets are still. But you see it now. The layers beneath the calm, the risk, the responsibility, the trust placed in a single badge. Grady finally stretches, stands, and says, "Night's clear. You're off duty." You smile, somehow exhausted and energized at once. He adds, "You've got a decent look for law, if you ever stay." You consider that. As you walk home, the sky is stitched with stars again, the same sky as last night, but somehow softer, more personal. You pass the pie lady's house. There's a raccoon on her roof, chewing triumphantly. You tip your hat. The town sleeps, but you don't. Not just yet. You've seen the night from the other side, and it sees you back. You wake later than usual, sun already halfway up the sky, birds chirping with an enthusiasm that frankly feels judgmental. After a night riding with the sheriff, your dreams were filled with haunted pigs and runaway pies. You stretch, groan, and wonder what job could possibly top playing deputy for a night. Then someone knocks at the door. A boy, barefoot, holding a piece of folded paper. "Doc needs help," he says. "Says bring steady hands, empty stomach, and don't faint." Oh no. Today, you're the doctor's assistant. You gulp, grab your boots, and say a quick prayer to anyone listening, preferably one with medical experience. The clinic is a small building next to the church, more shed than hospital. Inside it smells of alcohol, herbs, candle smoke, and mild panic. A woman is moaning softly on a cot. A man with a sling is mumbling to himself. The doctor, a wiry man in a brown vest, turns to you with blood on his sleeves and hope in his eyes. "You ever seen an open wound? I try to avoid them," you answer honestly. He grins. "Too late now." He hands you a bucket. "That's for, well, you'll know when you need it." The first patient is a farmer with a dislocated shoulder. The doctor talks gently, nods, then suddenly grabs the man's arm and yanks. There's a pop, a scream, a string of very creative language. You almost drop the bucket. "Good," the doctor says. "Now hold this while I wrap it." You do your best to help. Gauze here, thread there, you cut bandages, you clean scrapes, you definitely step in something you regret. A real historical fact. Frontier medicine was often improvised, undersupplied, and terrifying. Doctors were few and far between, sometimes self-taught, often working with limited tools and no anesthesia. Whiskey was both painkiller and disinfectant. If something needed cutting, you bit down and hoped for the best. The second patient is a child with a fever. The doctor places a hand on her forehead, then crushes dried herbs into a tea. He murmurs something under his breath. Not a prayer exactly, but close. "She'll be all right," he says, "if she rests, if we're lucky." That's the thing about medicine out here. It's part science, part ritual, and part wishful thinking. You help grind herbs using a stone bowl. The smell is sharp. Mint, sage, and something vaguely burnt. You bottle the mixture, label it with shaky handwriting, and hand it off to a grateful mother. You're feeling confident now until the next case. A man with a bullet wound in his thigh. He walks in like it's a paper cut. Sits calmly. Lights a pipe. The doctor sighs. Been like that since last week? You blink. A week? The man shrugs. Figured it'd come out on its own. Spoiler, it didn't. You hold the lamp. The doctor sterilizes a pair of terrifying tweezers in flame. The man hums a folk tune. Then the doctor digs into the wound. You almost faint. You don't. But it's close. The bullet comes out with a clink. You will never forget that sound. You help wrap the wound using more gauze than you thought existed. The man thanks you, finishes his pipe, and walks out like he just bought a loaf of bread. Quirky tidbit? Many frontier folks avoided doctors unless absolutely necessary. Some feared them. Others couldn't afford them. Home remedies ruled the day. Mustard plasters, onion poultices, honey on burns, or chewing bark for pain. Some worked. Some didn't. Some just made you smell bad. As you wash your hands in cold water, the doctor gives you a tired smile. You've got a stronger stomach than I expected. You shake your head. I feel like I aged 10 years. He chuckles. Good. Now help me boil the instruments. You stoke the fire, drop the bloodied tools into a pot of water, watch them simmer like some twisted soup. The smell is memorable. You clean the floors, restock herbs, dispose of what needs disposing, with that bucket finally serving its purpose. The sun climbs higher. Patients trickle in and out. Splinters. Burns. A tooth extraction involving a string, a door, and the promise of candy after. Historians still debate whether frontier medicine saved more lives or risked them. In many cases, doctors were flying blind, but they tried. They adapted. And in towns like this, they were respected, if not always trusted. By late afternoon, the clinic quiets. You sit with the doctor on the porch, sipping weak tea and watching dust roll across the road. I lost 3 patients last month, he says. 2 I couldn't help. 1 I could, if he'd come sooner. You nod, not knowing what to say. You want to make a difference out here? He adds. Don't wait. Show up. Do the thing, even if it's messy, especially then. You nod again, this time understanding. He pats your shoulder. Not bad for a first day. Come back if you ever want to learn stitches. You smile, say you'll think about it. You won't, but the offer means something. You walk home slowly. The town is bathed in evening gold again. Chickens peck lazily in the dirt. Kids chase each other with sticks. The world seems softer somehow, even after all the blood. You pass the boarding house. A woman on the porch asks how your day was. You say, I held a bullet in my hand. She pauses. Did you shoot someone? No, I caught it. She laughs. You'll fit in here. And maybe, just maybe, she's right. You wake to the sound of hammering. Again. But this time, it's not yours. And thank the stars for that, because your arms still haven't forgiven you for the fence incident. Through the window, you see a few townsfolk boarding up the blacksmith's shed. You pull on your boots, step outside, and immediately get roped into a conversation. Big storm coming, someone says. You look up. The sky is mostly blue, dotted with a few lazy clouds, nothing threatening. It feels like a setup, But by the time you reach the edge of town, you can already feel it. That heaviness in the air, the smell of wet dirt, even though nothing's wet yet. The wind whispering through the grass like it's delivering a warning. You're not in for just any weather. You're in for a prairie storm. And out here, that's no small thing. A rancher flags you down. Need help with the animals before it hits, he says. You nod, because by now, saying yes before you understand what you're agreeing to has become your entire Wild West strategy. You follow him out to the pasture. The sky is darker now, thickening. The cattle are restless. They know. The rancher hands you a rope. We need to move 'em to the low field. Keep 'em together. Don't spook 'em. You stare at the rope, then at the cattle, then at your own city slicker hands, soft and utterly unqualified. Just wave your arms and yell, he says, as if that explains everything. You do your best. You yell. You wave. The cows mostly ignore you. A few saunter in the right direction. One looks at you with disdain only cows can muster. Another tries to chew your shirt. Eventually, with the help of a few dogs and the rancher's very loud whistling, the herd is moved. You're sweating, covered in mud, but no one was trampled, so you call it a win. The clouds above now look like they're being stirred with a giant spoon. Gray folds layered with charcoal. Lightning flickers in the distance like a warning light on a dying spaceship. You help the rancher latch the gate, then sprint back to town just as the first fat drops begin to fall. By the time you reach shelter, the storm is no longer a promise. It's a full-blown character. Rain slams the earth in sheets. Thunder cracks so loud you feel it in your bones. The wind howls through the streets like a wild thing loosed. Shutters bang. The saloon sign swings wildly. A chicken races by, screaming what you can only assume are curse words. You huddle in the general store with half the town. The clerk hands out dry cloths and cornbread. Someone says, "Heard a twister touchdown 20 miles west last month. Took a whole barn with it." Another replies, "Barn? Took the horse, too." A real historical fact. The Great Plains were known for extreme weather. Thunderstorms could spawn tornadoes without warning. Lightning could kill livestock or people. Prairie fires, dust storms, and flash floods were common and often deadly. The weather didn't just change plans, it changed lives. You peer through the glass. Lightning arcs across the sky like it's angry at the ground. For a moment, the whole town is lit up in eerie white, like a daguerreotype flash frozen in time. Then darkness again. You hear a crash, a shout. A roof shingle flies past the window like an angry frisbee. The sheriff bursts in. "Roof caved in on the smithy, no injuries, need help with tarps." Without thinking, you grab a coat and follow him back into the storm. You hold a tarp while the sheriff and a few others nail it down. You're soaked in seconds. Rain stings your skin. Wind nearly rips the cloth from your hands. But you don't let go, because no one else does either. That's the thing out here. When the weather comes, really comes, there's no hiding. There's only holding fast. Quirky tidbit. Some frontier folks believed storms were more than weather. They were signs, omens, even punishment. Lightning was God's fire. Thunder was the drum of judgment. Others just knew it meant get your laundry in fast and hope the outhouse doesn't blow over. Back inside, dripping and shaking, someone hands you a cup of warm cider. You sit by the stove, steam rising from your sleeves like you're slowly returning from the dead. Around you, people laugh, joke, tell stories about worse storms. One man claims he once rode out a twister in a barrel. You believe him? Mostly because his beard looks like it's been through a blender. Historians still argue whether frontier communities were resilient because of the hardships, or in spite of them. Either way, storms didn't just test buildings. They tested bonds. Who showed up? Who helped? Who stayed standing? Eventually, the thunder fades, the wind settles, the rain slows to a whisper. You step outside. The town looks like it just finished a battle. Mud everywhere, loose boards, a few fences down. But people are already setting to work, patching, sweeping, checking on neighbors. And above it all, that smell. Rain on dirt, fresh, cold, alive. You tilt your head back. Let a few final drops hit your face. You didn't just weather the storm. You helped outlast it. Later, back in your room, you dry off. Your clothes hang like defeated soldiers. Your boots slosh when you move them. You collapse onto the bed with a sigh that feels like it came from your ancestors. Out here, the weather doesn't care who you are, but how you respond. That's everything. You wake to silence. No roosters, no hammering, no goats. Just a stillness so thick, you wonder for a moment if the world's taken the day off. But as you step outside, you realize it's market day, which means the town is currently at war with itself. You follow the noise. The center of town has transformed into a swirling, chaotic parade of wagons, tents, crates, animals, and opinions. People are shouting. Chickens are escaping. A man is aggressively trying to sell what appears to be a boot-shaped turnip. This isn't your average sidewalk sale. This is barter battleground. You step cautiously between two wagons stacked high with produce. Someone hands you a pickle. You're not sure why, but you accept it like a gift from an ancient oracle. A woman yells, "3 eggs for that comb? 3? Highway robbery." The merchant shrugs. It's got all its teeth. You blink. The comb? Welcome to frontier economics. You edge toward a stall selling hats. Try one on. It smells like pipe smoke and distant trauma. You take it off quickly. The man behind the table says, "You look like you've seen a ghost." You reply, "Only in the mirror." He grins, offers you a mirror for 2 pennies and a button. You realize this place doesn't run on logic. It runs on exchange, but more importantly, on conversation. You trade words long before you trade goods. Real historical fact, barter was a cornerstone of frontier life. With money scarce and coins often mismatched, Mexican pesos, U.S. dollars, and Canadian cents all circulating together, people learned to negotiate for what they needed. Eggs for boots, firewood for soap, a coat in exchange for a promise to fix someone's roof. You decide to try your hand at a trade. You approach a woman selling jars of apple butter. "I'll trade you this pickle," you say, offering it like a medieval knight presenting a sword. She looks at it, sniffs it, blinks. Add a button. You dig into your pocket. Find a lonesome brass button. She nods. Deal. You walk away victorious. Now you have apple butter. And a story. Further down, a traveling merchant from 3 towns over in one town you ain't heard of lays out oddities on a blanket. Silver spoons, a broken compass, a music box that plays half a lullaby, and then laughs. He offers you a copper ring in exchange for a joke I haven't heard before. You tell him about the chicken and the sheriff. He laughs, hands you the ring, says, "That one's worth wearing." Quirky tidbit. Some traveling salesman didn't just peddle goods, they traded for secrets, jokes, or local ghost stories. One was famously paid with a recipe for pie crust so flaky it caused family arguments. As the morning stretches on, the chaos intensifies. Two boys duel with sticks over a pair of socks. A preacher loudly barters for cinnamon with a man who clearly thinks he invented cinnamon. A pig escapes, dashes under a wagon, and emerges wearing a bonnet. No one knows how. No one asks. You help a woman lift a crate of dried corn onto her wagon. She offers you a ribbon in thanks. You tie it around your wrist for no reason. It just feels right. Historians still argue whether these markets were economically efficient or just elaborate excuses to gossip and flirt in public. Either way, they were vital to the rhythm of town life. You stop for a moment. Take it all in. The smells, smoke, apples, leather, and something vaguely fermented. The sounds, barking, haggling, laughter, and the occasional angry goose. The colors, red apples, blue quilts, yellow dresses, brown horses. It's beautiful, chaotic, a mess of needs and offerings, trust and trickery, scarcity and abundance. And somehow it works. You try to trade again. You offer to write someone a poem in exchange for a hunk of bread. The man listens, nods, says he wants it to be about his mule. You sit on a barrel, write 5 lines about a mule named Clementine. He tears up, gives you 2 hunks of bread. You might have just found your first freelance gig. Later in the day, you meet a girl with a small jar of marbles. She says she collects them in case she forgets who she is. Each marble has a name. One's named Tuesday. Another's named Don't Yell So Loud. You give her a ribbon from your wrist. She trades you a marble called Hope. You don't know what to say, so you just say, "Thanks," and mean it. As the sun dips lower, the stalls begin to pack up. Deals are finished, debts are noted, hugs are exchanged. A man walks by with a sheep under one arm and a broom under the other, looking entirely at peace with his choices. You sit on a crate watching. Someone plays a fiddle. Kids dance in dust. It's not just about trading stuff. It's about showing up, offering, listening, laughing, trusting strangers, if only for a moment. You don't walk home with much. A ring, a marble, a poem in your pocket, a smear of apple butter on your sleeve. But somehow, you feel richer. You fall asleep that night thinking not about money or goods or even survival, but about connection. Because out here, it's not what you have. It's what you're willing to trade for a story, a smile, or a sliver of someone else's world. You rise slowly, limbs stiff, but heart strangely light. Yesterday's market day lingers in your mind like a strange, wonderful dream. Mules named Clementine, pickle for apple butter deals, and one very opinionated pig in a bonnet. But the Wild West doesn't offer many slow days, and today's task is a little less whimsical. You're heading beyond the edge of town to spend a full day with a buffalo hunter. You meet him at dawn. His name's Elijah, but most folks just call him Tracks. He's tall, broad-shouldered, with a mustache that looks like it's seen things. His rifle is longer than your leg. His horse looks at you like it already knows you're not built for this. "You know how to ride?" Trax asks. "Absolutely not." Good. Easier to teach you than unteach bad habits. You mount the horse, upside down, somehow. After several humiliating adjustments and a brief moment where you nearly invent the world's first flying dismount, you're in the saddle, bouncing awkwardly alongside the most unbothered man alive. The plains stretch out before you, rolling grasslands, hills like soft waves, skies so wide they feel fake. It's beautiful and massive and silent, except for the distant hum of wind. There used to be millions of 'em out here, Trax says. Buffalo? More than you'd believe. Covered the land like waves. Now, you're lucky to see a few in a week, and just like that, your heart sinks a little. A mainstream historical fact. At the start of the 1800s, tens of millions of bison roamed the Great Plains. By the late 19th century, due to overhunting, especially for hides and sport, that number had plummeted to the low thousands. It's one of the most rapid and devastating population collapses in recorded history. Trax rides with the ease of someone part animal. You cling to the saddle and try not to become one with the prairie. After a couple of hours, you pause to rest under a tree older than your country. Trax shows you how to check the wind, scan the hills, spot movement in the distance. Buffalo don't move fast unless you make 'em, he says. Then they run like thunder. You eat jerky that tastes like regret and raisins that may be raisins. Then it's back on the trail. Eventually, Trax holds up a hand. You stop. Ahead, across a small ridge, a herd. Maybe 30 buffalo, grazing slowly, moving like shadows through the golden grass. They're huge, towering, majestic. Not just animals, figures. You feel like you're staring into a past that's almost gone. Trax doesn't shoot. Not yet. He watches, waits. Then, softly, we'll follow. Not today. You blink. I thought, too many calves. Wind's wrong. You don't rush this. You respect this. He leans back in his saddle, eyes scanning the land like it's a language only he understands. Quirky tidbit. Some buffalo hunters claim to be able to shoot over a mile away. One infamous man, nicknamed One-Shot Jenkins, boasted he could hit a coin at 500 yards. He was later discovered to have very large coins. But for every trigger-happy braggart, there were others like Trax, who hunted with care, who took what they needed, who mourned the loss even as they contributed to it. Historians still argue whether buffalo hunters were villains of environmental collapse or just cogs in a much larger wheel, pushed by demand, by military policy, by expanding railroads and shrinking native lands. The rest of the day passes slowly. You track hoof prints, learn to tell the difference between fresh scat and yesterday's oops, and listen to the sounds of the grass shifting, birds calling, distant thunder threatening from the far hills. At one point, you find bones, a full buffalo skeleton bleached by time, ribs curved toward the sky like broken wings. Trax stops, tips his hat, says nothing. You do the same. The silence says more. Later, you help set up camp. He shows you how to build a fire using buffalo chips, dried dung. You wrinkle your nose. You want to stay warm or stay proud, he asks. You choose warmth. The fire crackles. He cooks beans in a battered tin pot. You sit under the stars, wrapped in a borrowed blanket, watching the sky unfold in quiet majesty. Out here, the constellations don't twinkle. They glow, vast, clear, eternal. Trax speaks without turning his head. You get one shot at this place. He doesn't mean the West. He means life. He hands you a mug of warm something, maybe coffee, maybe dirt. Doesn't matter. You sip it anyway. The buffalo sleep out there somewhere, moving like clouds, like history you can't hold, like breath. You wonder if they dream of wide fields untouched, of before. Eventually, you lie back on the hard earth. No mattress, no fan, just sky and stars and a coyote's song in the distance. You don't sleep easily, but you sleep honestly. And when morning comes and the wind smells like memory, you understand something. You didn't come here to be a buffalo hunter. You came to know one, and to see, really see, what it means to live close to the edge of vanishing, to walk beside it, and still wake up with your eyes open. The sky is pale with the first brush of dawn when you rise. Your back is sore, your legs ache. There's something crunchy in your hair that might be a leaf, might be a bug. But as you sit up and look across the plains, golden light just beginning to stretch across the waving grass, you feel different. Wiser? No, let's not go that far. But maybe emptied out, in a good way, like the noise has left your bones and made room for stillness. Trax offers you a nod, and that's all the farewell you get, or need. You climb back into the saddle, ride side by side in a silence that's more companionable than any conversation. When you finally return to town, it feels smaller, not in a bad way. More like a toy you've been living inside, one you now understand from every dusty, aching angle. You've survived the saloon, the sheriff, the market, the storm. You've bartered for marbles, helped deliver medicine, and stared down a herd of buffalo like a whisper from another world. And now, as your time here winds down, there's one last stop, the cemetery. You didn't plan it. Your boots just take you there. It's on a hill just north of town, a quiet slope scattered with wooden crosses, stone markers, and the occasional fence made more of sentiment than security. The grass here grows wild and uneven. The wind doesn't whisper, it hums. You walk the rows slowly. Some graves are old, faded, names nearly gone. Others are recent, fresh flowers, a child's toy at the base of one. There's a bench beneath a crooked tree, and you sit. Because this is the place where the frontier becomes honest, where all the noise falls away, where every person you met, could have met, will meet, ends up. A real historical fact. Frontier cemeteries were often communal efforts. Families dug graves, friends carved markers, burials might happen within hours. And while some were solemn, others became full town affairs. Potlucks, songs, shared stories. Mourning, yes, but also remembering. You hear footsteps. It's the preacher? You hadn't even noticed him arrive. He nods, sits beside you, doesn't speak at first. Then, peaceful, isn't it? You nod. I always think the people here would laugh, he says, looking out across the graves. All the fuss we make trying to stay alive. But you can't fear death too hard out here. It's too close. You glance sideways. He shrugs. This isn't a sad place, just a stopping point. Folks who lived. Some even lived well. You both sit in silence again. It's not awkward. It's reverent. Eventually, he stands. Tells you, if you remember a name, they're not gone yet. You stay on the bench a little longer. Watch the wind play with the grass. Think about everyone you've met. Mrs. Pye, Grady, the sheriff, the doctor, with the tired eyes and stained hands, tracks, stoic and vast as the prairie itself, and everyone else too, the blacksmith, the gossiping store clerks, the girl with marbles named Tuesday, even the chicken with revenge in its soul. You saw them laugh, work, bleed, survive, some barely, some boldly. You didn't just survive the Wild West, you understood it. The hunger, the humor, the dust, the danger, the dancing, the stories traded like coins, the ghosts traded like breath. Historians still argue whether the Wild West was truly wild or just untamed, whether it was lawless or simply trying to invent a new kind of order, whether it was a tragedy of conquest or a triumph of grit. But here's what you know, deep in your calloused hands and your wind-burned face, it was real, rough, raw, ridiculous, and it demanded everything from you. You rise, walk back into town. It's quieter now. Or maybe you're just hearing it differently. Less noise, more rhythm. Someone waves at you. Another calls your name. You nod back, boots crunching soft over gravel. The sun is rising behind you, or maybe in front. It doesn't matter. What matters is this. You came out here thinking you'd dip your toe into history. Instead, it swallowed you whole, and somehow you surfaced stronger, smiling. Now, as the dust settles and the prairie fades behind your eyelids, let's bring everything down. Let your breathing slow. Let your shoulders drop. You've earned this moment. Picture that wide sky again, stretching across the plains in a perfect arc, painted with soft clouds and lazy hawks circling high. The kind of sky that doesn't ask questions. It just watches, quietly, steadily. The wind moves gently now. No storms, no fire. Just a cool breeze brushing across your skin like a lullaby. You're lying on a patch of sun-warmed earth, the scent of grass and cedar lulling your senses. Somewhere nearby, a windmill creaks. A horse nickers softly. Far off, a harmonica plays, off-key but sweet. You're not in a hurry. There are no wagons to load, no barters to make, no fences to mend. Just this stillness, this softness, this slow fade into rest. The town is safe for tonight. The stars are climbing. And you, brave time traveler, you've made it. Through the grit, and yes, the goat attacks. You've seen every corner of a world that doesn't exist anymore, except here, now, in your memory. So take a long breath in and slowly let it go. Feel the ground beneath you, solid, steady, familiar. Sleep comes easy now, like a dust-heavy sunset, slow and glowing, like the hush of boots outside your door, passing softly on their way home. You're safe, you're warm, and you don't need to ride out again, at least not tonight. Rest easy, traveler. The West will still be there in the morning, and it'll be waiting for you. End of script. Sweet dreams.